Hey guys, and welcome. We're back with Collegiate Rising again. So this is the hardware and product management panel, and today we're going to be talking about a lot of things within the hardware industry. But before we go into that, special thanks to Hitmarker for sponsoring today, and also Uconnect for putting on this amazing event. With that being said, so I'm the mod today. My name is Kat Tompkins. I was previously Public Relations and Marketing Manager for both IBUYPOWER and later on Cooler Master, and currently doing social media for Tencent's Timi Studios. Let me introduce you guys to our panelists.
Hey everyone, Brad Soken. I manage the product team at IBUYPOWER Computers. We oversee all the desktop and notebook products, as well as our custom cases and peripheral products.
How's it going? I'm Sean. I'm a product manager at HyperX. I started on the audio side, but over time I've transferred over to manage the mouse, keyboard, and microphone lines as well. And I also started in collegiate esports too, so kind of cool for this existing today because it didn't exist back when I was in college.
Yeah, pretty much. We'll definitely go into all our beginnings and stuff, but I guess we can start off with that. So for a lot of students just learning about the industry, could you discuss more about your roles as product managers? Can you summarize your role to someone who's just learning about the industry?
So at iBuy, the PM role, it kind of falls under two really distinctly different categories. There's our system and component PMs that deal with PC and laptop configurations. And then there's the standalone product PMs who deal with our custom cases and any other standalone stuff. Right. And those two responsibilities, the sets of responsibilities are very different. The component PMs mostly handle hardware configurations that go into our PCs. They're mostly tasked with defining compatibility rules and advising on configurations that make the most sense. That's a much more rapid process, and you mostly just have to work with web and production departments, as well as communication with the vendors that make the parts. And that's kind of the full range of that. And then the product PMs are doing things more in a traditional sense. You're seeing a product through from the initial idea to production and distribution. For that, you're going to be interacting with the whole spectrum of folks who make the product happen. You have designers and engineers that are creating the thing physically. And then you're sometimes dealing with the factory that's doing the manufacturing. And then you have another set of designers who are creating the marketing and sales assets. And then the marketing and sales people themselves who are going to be in charge of actually selling the product. And you have to bridge that whole gap together. And then one of the fun parts is with a company our size, not all these teams actually have someone they can dedicate to that role. And so as the PM, you sometimes have to step in and do some of those things to fill in the gaps. So you kind of have to understand a lot of those different roles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brad said it really well. I think product managers is a true coordination between all the different facets of jobs through product development cycle. So, we're responsible for defining what features go into the product, what the product will look like. So working with the designers as well as the engineers, and making sure that it's something obviously good quality product. And then from there, you kind of work with the teams that are kind of work with it on the front end side. So dealing with product marketing teams or sales teams, or account managers that are handling those retailer e-tail type businesses. So it is learning and understanding a lot of the, not just product itself, but a lot of other departments that you're going to be working with. So it's doing a lot of market research, staying on top of all the trends. I think we know the gaming industry is the biggest roller coaster ever, right? You have things we've seen before, the Fortnite effect that you have to really catches everyone out of, catches everyone off guard. This huge spike of products and this huge new trend of influencers that are coming into the scene. So it's definitely always trying to stay on top of the market because the gaming industry changes so fast. But it's always interesting, always kind of posing a new challenge every day.
Mm-hmm. Just kind of going into that a little more. So, the next few topics that we'll cover is specifically regarding hiring. So since, as product managers, you sometimes often you oversee a multitude of teams. How much input do you specifically have in the hiring process when hiring your employees for your teams? And what are some of the most important things that you look for when you hire someone?
Yeah, I would say like kind of outside my own department, there's not a ton of involvement. I do get asked a lot of times for input on other candidates for positions, but I feel like that's more to do with the fact that I've been working here for a while, and less about being in the product like field specifically. And as far as important things to look for, I would say that the very first thing I'm always looking for is passion for the product, whichever role they're looking for. Just like I said, some indication that they're very passionate about that product or that industry.
Yeah, I don't think we have, again, it's kind of similar to what Brad said. We don't really have too much input in terms of like other departments' hiring process, but if it's with our own team, obviously, we have a little bit of say. Definitely, we look for people, like you said, that are really passionate and driven. I think a product manager role kind of requires a kind of personality to kind of want to dig into the research and be able to kind of understand everything, because obviously you're defining features of what you think is important for a gamer and what you think is not important, right? Because one feature or one design thing can really screw up a product, and then that'll just pay off, in a review later, and then it kind of just gets. It's like a downhill slope from there. So it's definitely needing someone that has the drive and ambition to kind of keep wanting to learn and research and understand the product, not just within your company, but within everybody else, right? There's a lot of other competitor products that are there, and you really have to understand each and every one at a certain level to be able to design something that's good for everyone.
So in terms of networking, what role and level of importance do you think networking plays, in getting into the tech industry or the hardware industry?
I think that it definitely does play a pretty big role, but it can be tough because it kind of goes both ways. It really depends on like the substance behind that connection. We'll get a lot of messages, I guess, like secondly networking from people saying, hey, my friend is interested in this position, can you put in a good word, and that type of thing. It'll probably get us to give the resume a closer look, but if it doesn't come with like some indication of that person's like motivation and goals, it doesn't get you too far, at least not with me. We've had our share of kind of bad apples that have come through those types of recommendations. And so I'm kind of wary of it now. But like I said, if there's some like really strong evidence of passion about hardware and that they really want to make a career in it rather than, they just need a job, then that's going to reinforce, what's hopefully already going to be in their resume and make an even stronger case for them.
Yeah, I would say, networking in any field, not necessarily just esports, is really important. I think a lot of, the top talent is coming from like the collegiate levels, so which is why we try and be as involved at this level as possible, because they're like the next generation of any field in this industry. So I would say just kind of keep doing what everyone's doing in this whole collegiate space, and meeting all these people and getting the opportunity to talk to industry professionals. And just kind of pick their brain a little bit, right? I think any chance you can get to do that and network out yourself, whether that's a live event or a virtual event these days, I think that's just something you just need to do. But yeah, I think for the product manager role itself, it's definitely like a challenging job, right? Because you definitely always need to be at the top of your game, and it definitely requires a special and right amount of ambition to really push everything through. And that's kind of what we see in the leaders in the collegiate space, right? You have these guys that are, creating Uconnect or creating like other programs to get people involved. Like those things are really good because it allows us to see people that finish a project all the way through, right? It's, whether it's creating a LAN at your school or, doing a project portfolio, like a business case portfolio at your school. Like being able to see and show those things, I think, are really important for our career.
So continuing on with hiring, so, many hardware and peripheral companies often have many types of positions open. So like, for example, on my end, I was public relations, and, there's human resources. But, many students tend to pile on different, so let me reword that. So, there's many different roles, but are there any roles that you think that students overlook that are actually great entry-level roles into, where you guys are at in the field?
I would say IBUYPOWER is a little unique in that aspect because we do have our like production and quality testing and tech support departments all like kind of in the same building. So for my department, like half the team came from those other departments within the company. Some of them aren't even college graduates, right? I have two guys from the production area. Those are the people like building and testing PCs. You can see people really stand out from their work there. And I have one guy from tech support. So whenever it's reasonable, if we have a new position open up, we usually look for an internal transfer first, or like a promotion within the company, before making that external posting. And those jobs are like way more plentiful and open up way more often than like within the higher levels of the, like, I guess the management teams and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely there's other opportunities to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, I mean, I think basically like I started as an intern, right? 6 years ago when HyperX first started. So, and that was just doing market research, reading reviews on Amazon for our products, breaking those down. So there's no job that's too little, or you think, to kind of get your foot in the door. I think any opportunity that you have, you should definitely take it if it's something that you're going to have a little bit of passion for. I'm not trying to say that if you're trying to be like, don't go too far away from what you want to do, obviously, but any way you kind of get your foot in the door, I think you definitely should take it, because, I started as an intern, and then throughout the year, started to learn more about the technical level of products, as well as, the whole scene as well. And then you take that knowledge that you learn from your actual company, whether that's talking to other marketing people or business people or the engineers. All these little things you learn just help you build your career within. And kind of like what Brad said is most of the time, if it's possible, we always like to look internally first, because, it saves time on kind of having to retrain people on, different processes and different programs that we use internally. And it just makes it so much easier. You kind of already have a personal connection with those people, and you kind of know their work ethic and how they do certain things. So yeah, I just kind of encourage anyone to kind of get in any way you can, as long as it's kind of within a somewhat near direction of what you want to do.
And to wrap up the hiring portion, and I guess kind of to wrap up everything that we just talked about, what would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give to students that want to work at specifically HyperX or IBUYPOWER someday?
Biggest advice I would give is to get involved with and kind of stay up to date with the general hardware industry. It doesn't matter which role you're in, which PM role you're in at IBUYPOWER. It's like really of the utmost importance to kind of have your finger on the pulse of the industry. If you don't know which way the industry is headed, like how can you develop products for it, right? And as a side effect, like if you're involved with those communities, you kind of leave a trail of your experience there, right? If you're interacting on a public forum, like let's say you're on Discord or Reddit or something, right? Like we can kind of see what you've been up to, and it's almost like we've already been working with you for a little while, right? So like we can get an idea of where your interests and skills are at.
Yeah, I hate to be an echo all the time for Brad because he's just nailing these answers right on, but it's basically the same thing, right? I think it's being as up to date as possible in the hardware space, like whether that's going on, Reddit mechanical keyboards or mouse review or being on those Discord communities, just being able to show that you've already done the work and you're already willing to kind of put in that much work to either be an enthusiast in the space or comment and check up on stuff, or even build your own stuff. Like all that stuff is great because that kind of helps you set up stuff for like future interviews. If you're saying you may not have enough product manager experience specifically, because it's not technically something that you can kind of get right after college because you kind of need some experience first. But if you're able to build up a mini portfolio these things that you've been working on the side, then it at least gives us a better idea and insight in terms of the type of work ethic and passion that you have for the hardware space. So just being able to kind of create like a mini portfolio. I think someone in the previous panel said it, like a mini portfolio to show to an interview or to bring to an interview does wonders, especially if it's something that you're new that you're trying to get into.
All right, so kind of going into the industry insights, side of things, just more about, let's talk more about the tech industry and where it's going nowadays. So which categories of gaming hardware and peripherals do you think are evolving and changing the most in terms of capacity, tech, and style? And, what do you think is like the most exciting piece of tech to you right now? Or I don't know.
I'll kind of go to that one first. So right now, I think the biggest one is like the whole mouse category. I think is really interesting, and we've been obviously doing a lot of research in this space, and it's interesting to see that even like the mouse or keyboards, for example, are like they're no longer just becoming like mouse and keyboard, right? Obviously, a keyboard is a black rectangle with letters and numbers on it, right? That form factor will never change, but you're getting these little things that are becoming like fashion trends, right? We have people that are doing like artisan keycaps or smaller form factors, or doing 2 colors on their keyboards, or building their own keyboards, or like the whole mouse thing where mice are no longer a piece of, it's just like just a mouse. It's like the style and flair that these new designs are kind of bringing into the scene, and then the influencers that are kind of pairing themselves to these new designs kind of took us a little bit by storm, because it was interesting to see obviously when Ninja built his first mouse, or Tfue gets his own custom keyboard, right? You see these more niche style things get brought up into a mainstream market. So I think in those categories, it's super interesting to see how these influencers and these new tech or design are kind of coming into light.
Yeah, and since I mostly deal with the like performance hardware stuff like inside the actual PC, one of the things that kind of excites me right now is we're in the middle of this like really major upheaval of AMD finally catching up to Intel on like processor tech. And then Intel's also announcing going into the graphics space. So I think we're in for a ton of like really cool innovation that's going to be driven by that new competition. Because you go back 3 years, Intel is so dominant in processor and NVIDIA is so dominant in graphics, right? Like you don't really expect like too much else coming other than whatever they're doing normally. But now I think that's going to get kind of thrown off, and we'll see some really cool stuff. And another thing that I think is cool, and this is kind of like just like a silly quality of life thing, but I just started using RTX voice, and on the subject of like keyboards and mice, especially mechanical keyboards, that has been such a like huge game changer for like online gaming for me, because no longer do people have to deal with like frantic mechanical keyboard clicking, and I don't have to hear theirs. So it's pretty like I said, it's a silly thing, but like it's something that I didn't even really think about in years past. I just figured it was impossible to filter it out because it'd been 10 years of mechanical keyboards and no one had done it. But like they did it and it works pretty well. So, that's cool.
Yeah, because the interesting thing about that is like the keyboard clicks are so hard to block out, because usually what people or things have happened in the past is like they block out too much noise, and then your voice quality like just reduces like crazy and you sound like robotic, or your voice chops. So it's cool to see these new programs, like you said, like that don't bother you. Like I was telling Kat earlier that I live on a busy street, and using programs like Crisp or RTX voice just blocks that out completely without kind of hindering too much of the voice quality. So that stuff is cool.
I literally thought about that question in my head too. I was like, I wonder what's like most exciting. I mean, I literally just came from the whole lightweight mouse trend and stuff like that, and hardcore like researching all of that too. So it's interesting to see where the evolution of the the gaming mouse is going to take us. Might get a little lighter. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because so you see like lightweight mice, and I think everyone that's kind of been on that trend, if you tried to go back to like a regular weighted mouse, it feels like you're moving a rock, right? So it's interesting to see, at what weight is too light, or you know, or
yeah, that's the issue I've been having. I'm like, oh no, I was on a death ladder for a really long time, and it's not even that heavy, and you know, then you switch to lightweight, and then
yeah, and then now it's like every gram is like that much different, you know, and it's crazy to see how light, you know, companies are gonna make their gaming mice, and is there going to be a threshold where it's going to be like, okay, now I just feel like I'm moving nothing.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see.
Yeah. I guess since, you know, you both come from companies that have very deep grassroots within esports and gaming, so you're aware that it's grown incredibly fast, you know, in the past couple of years. What are the most glaring ways that the landscape has changed in your perspective?
So I think it's interesting. So when I was starting to follow esports a lot, right? I think obviously the influencer stuff has gotten bigger, I think, and people tying products to influencers. I think back when I was watching a lot more. I mean, I still watch a lot of esports, but I was always following teams, right? And esports and teams were really driving a lot of the business and stuff like that. Now it's also not just teams, right? People are not just following, at least in my opinion, not following whole teams as specifically, because players move around a lot. People are following the actual individual players and trying to figure out what kind of gear they're using, as well as the influencer side. You see a lot of them kind of push product, and you see a lot of companies like invest in collaborations with these guys because they can really drive the business. I think something that you know HyperX has been doing is kind of branching off to not just gamers anymore. I think they're branching off to other people that is, you know, that see gaming as a lifestyle, whether that's an NBA player or a you know, a music artist. It's everyone, right? So that's kind of why we spread out the range as much as we can, because I think we see a lot of this drive and tied to influencers, because you kind of see the whole blend of Fortnite and how they're able to put marshmallow in the game like that. That's crazy, right? You don't see that kind of stuff, and it's so unique to see those kind of collaborations. So definitely interesting. Things change every day. Like, you know, it could be one thing today, and in 3 months it could be a totally other thing, which is interesting for product managers, because it takes time to make things. Someone can say, like, I want, you know, I don't know, a new HyperX keyboard like today, right? Like, I want that. And we'll just say, okay, well, it'll take us time to develop, right? We have to build it, design it, and work through. And then in a year, or, you know, however long it takes to develop the product, it could be obsolete, right? So it's always, that's like the hardest part about product managing, and that challenge in itself, because again, this space is just way too volatile to really, you know, have those. Yeah, it's just too volatile, I guess.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of that. Like, I like how esports has really brought like a ton of like tension and legitimacy to gaming as a career path. But then it also, you know, like Sean was saying, it kind of brings the like physical sports influencer marketing and whatever they have to say like into our industry as well. And in some ways that can be like a real force for good, but it kind of depends on like which way it works for you. Like, it can kind of throw a wrench into the product development cycle. You know, before, like, the traditional like way that the industry used to work, or electronics industry in general, it was the company that makes the product used to kind of dictate the direction of the product. But now you see like these influencers that have these like huge followings, and they're actually doing more to dictate the direction of products than like your internal focus groups might be doing. So you have to take that into account. You know, you may have to change your product's feature set to satisfy like literally one influencer, versus like following whatever your traditional methods were, whatever answer that would give you. Like, maybe that's not the right answer, because you have a guy with 5 million followers who, if he says I want it in this color and you make it in that color, now you've got 5 million people that, you know, all like the decision that you've made. So that's kind of one of the big major changes, because, right, like that esports and influencers has kind of happened since I've been at IBUYPOWER. I've been there for close to 9 years. And, you know, when I started, it definitely was not like that. You know, everything was by the books. And now it's like you're constantly watching people's YouTube channels, and like it's not just gaming influencers, there's tech influencers, like there's Linus and those guys that are huge, and you got to listen to what they say, because if not, then you have this huge group of very focused audience that you could potentially alienate if you don't listen to them.
Yeah, and that was actually going to lead into my next question, since we're taking Q&A right now. So do you watch the YouTube reviews about your products? You pretty much just answered some of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we really dedicate like a good chunk of our time. Like every product that we launch is like our baby, right? It's, you're deciding the features that go into it, and you try to hope that everyone likes what you've been trying to like ideate in your head. And the second that reviewers come out and you like watch it, you really hope like something good, right? Like, okay. But I mean, before going into it, you kind of know like, okay, we might be okay here, we might not be okay here, but you're curious to see what they have to say. So definitely, the second that they launch, we definitely watch them and learn from them, right? Because there are very limited, I guess, tech reviewers, that have like that big wide audience. So you definitely want to have a good relationship with them and be able to talk to them and have them kind of work through problems with you if there is a problem with the product. And it always just feels great to see if they actually love the product and all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. We are always keeping an eye on those guys, and not just for our own products, right? We're generally watching everything they're reviewing that might be relevant to us, because we deal with like the whole PC ecosystem. So, we have to pay attention to like, especially like I said, people like Linus and Hardware Canucks and Steve from Gamers Nexus, right? You gotta listen to everything that they're focused on, and just make sure that you're not stepping into any pitfalls, from their perspective.
Mm-hmm. So another question, but can we speak about the increasing need for customizability in hardware, such as the custom keyboard scene? What are companies doing to make sure these, they meet these consumer needs? So I think this might be for you, Sean.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, again, like the whole customization in any space, you're seeing a lot. I think there was some audio stuff back in the day that other companies had where you can kind of customize colors. We try our best to kind of create extra colors for products like we did, the Cloud 2 and Pink, Red, and Gunmetal. The keyboard scene is probably the most interesting one, just because even though it's, like I said earlier, it's like a rectangle with letters on it, there's so much you can do in terms of the build itself of being plastic or aluminum or zinc or the keycaps themselves. But it's really difficult because there's so many different form factors, there's so many different layouts and key sizes, so many different switches that you can possibly put into this thing. So it's really, really hard to go as widespread as possible, because if we were to really do that, then it's kind of more like a build to order type thing, and just as a company that's trying to meet like mass market needs, it's a little difficult to kind of create that. So we definitely look at it, and we definitely try and see the best, like, I guess, compromise that we can do to give the keyboard guys, a great solid keyboard, as well as maybe creating like accessories packages to kind of push out to, again, make it a little bit more customizable for you, like kind of PBT putting keycaps that have popularized over the past year. But yeah, I think that's kind of all we can do as like one of the larger, as a larger company is we want to, trust me, as much as I want to build 50 million keyboards that all look different and are all super unique. It's just hard to because there are that many different variations for keyboards.
All right, guys. Yeah, yes. Let me see. Yeah, so we were talking about the custom. Yeah, okay. Sean, were you done with that? Sorry. Yeah, okay, cool.
Good.
Okay, cool. I didn't know where we left off. Sorry, guys, my Skype randomly crashed. But anyways, Brad, I realized, like, even for, for pre-builts and stuff, like, what would you say regarding customizability?
Yeah, we're kind of blessed in that regard, right? Because PCs or desktops are inherently modular, so it's a little bit easier for us to take exactly what a customer wants and put it together for them. Whereas like even a modular keyboard can only be so modular. So yeah, it's I would say that's a lot easier for us as long as someone makes the part. We can usually make it work for compatibility within the computer.
Mm-hmm. And also for Brad, how are custom PC companies innovating to capture the passion of PC enthusiasts, especially since the boom of custom-built PCs that happened, probably around the time that you started?
I think a lot of what our goal is we're trying to provide the same service that DIY does, right? We're basically just taking that labor that goes into building your PC yourself and kind of like taking care of that for you. We do also keep tabs on compatibility, make sure we're not building something that's not going to work. But on the side, we also have our custom products that go outside of what is available in DIY, and that's kind of like where we're trying to innovate. Try to figure out things that you can't get just from building it yourself, whether that's some custom small form factor case or like, we did the Snowblind product with the LCD side panel, like just as, that's kind of another level of customization. But, again, we're kind of lucky that our, because hardware performance just continues to increase, like we kind of ride that wave and, we're able to just keep giving people bigger and better things just because, our partners are supporting us with that.
Mm-hmm. And what considerations are taken when creating, PCs and peripherals for competitive players versus casual users? How does that market research work within both of your companies?
So for us, since we do build PCs for professional gamers, so we've sponsored different teams at different times. One of the big considerations that I think a lot of people don't think about is that the fastest isn't always the best, right? Building the most expensive computer is not necessarily going to give you the best gaming experience. For professional gamers, they're going to value consistency over anything else, right? So you need it to be reliable. You need to make sure that the PC has as much uptime as possible. And a lot of times that means not giving them the most expensive part, which kind of runs counter to the marketing image of, you're building the best and fastest PCs, but like really for professionals, a lot of times it's better to go to the furthest limit and then take one step back. Because that set of components is much more robust. The individual manufacturers are not pushing the limits of that hardware as far as it can go, which can lead to instability and overcomplicated systems. So that would be kind of how we go about it. We have our own demo pool of systems that we bring to events, so we kind of know generally what works and what doesn't. And so anytime there's a professional player, we usually say, hey, we have all this data based on like hardware reliability. And these are the parts that you should really be going with, because this is the stuff that's stable. It's going to last for longer, those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think, we've definitely worked with teams in the past to kind of, test prototypes and stuff like that and get their feedback. They're definitely the pickiest of picky people, because obviously they want the best gear for when they compete. It is hard to design strictly from their point of view, because they're so they're a different kind of side of the market, right? Obviously they're using it to a more extreme use, and they've tried out a lot of other products and stuff, but to actual create something for maybe pro teams, for example, it's a little difficult. So like for a mouse, for example, we can design a mouse for somebody, but then that mouse is fit for his hand, right? Or her hand. It doesn't matter, because once you give it to somebody else, it's gonna be completely different. So we definitely try and take a little bit of everything, right? We definitely try and get a bigger sample size, whether it's competitive players that we partner with our esports or influencers that get brought into the office, or just a regular casual gamer. So it's really diving deep, right? We definitely see who's launching what at a certain time and try and see how we can compete with those things. That way we can kind of design, but we always make sure in product development, we're always trying to validate, with people, with gamers, to make sure that we're not launching something that's just for us or just for, just because this team likes it or these influencers like it. It's something that's good for everyone. So just a lot of validation. That's kind of how our market research works.
I see. So the next thing that I'm seeing from the Q&A is, I guess, going back to, how students can get more involved. So how much does volunteering for, your companies, like, for example, you have tests, beta testing programs or event boothing and stuff like that. How much does volunteering for your company actually help with, eventually getting a job within those companies?
I think it helps a lot. Honestly, again, like kind of to piggyback what I said a little bit earlier, anything that you can do to get your name in the door, even if it's just for like some small experience, it does carry a long way. So I definitely met a lot of people that have volunteered at our booths that we kind of still keep in contact with. They kind of always ask questions about kind of getting into the industry, whether or not it's at HyperX directly, but just a way to get in. So I think it is important. I started as a volunteer before I got in, so definitely you kind of see how it goes, and it also just shows the initiative, right? You're trying to get in. I think that's like the most important part, is kind of taking that first step on your own, because opportunities kind of don't get thrown out at everybody. So being able to take that first step forward and volunteer at a booth or volunteer in anything, and then again start networking and just getting to know people.
Yeah, same. Back when we were still doing events, that was definitely a way that we could easily kind of gauge. I brought up passion before, but that's, like I said, we're literally working with you, like, so we know now what you would be like in that same situation if you were an employee, right? Like how you would deal with stress from, the event inevitably blowing up, right? Because that always happens at events. Something happens, and a lot of times we do have volunteers that step up and take care of things, and that definitely shows a lot of initiative and decision making. There's actually a ton of these guys that I wish we had more positions available, because they would be like first on the list for, like, especially our marketing events team. It's just you can only get so many good people or only have so many spots open. But also on the other side, I did mention it kind of goes both ways, right? So if you are going to volunteer, make sure you're being professional. It sounds silly to say it, but like, don't pick fights with people. Because kids in college, sometimes they get a little bit emotional. So yeah, just act when you're being a volunteer, like you literally act like you're an employee, and then it shows a lot of professionalism, and that helps a lot.
Awesome. And then going back to the product side, so what are some of the largest issues that you're currently trying to solve in the development of future products? This question can be as general as you want.
Yeah, I think it's a little vague, so I mean, I'll just kind of pick at something. But I think the like I said earlier, the biggest challenge for product development is basically trying to keep up with the trends and, again, staying on top of the market. Like the worst thing that can happen in development is like something that happened like a long time ago, is you get so far into development of a product and a new trend hits or a new technology hits that you're unaware of, and then you're like, crap, now we need to design something that is going to be out of date. So we have to go back, right? So it's definitely, that's probably one of the harder issues for being in this space that I hope we can kind of look for in the future. Is, again, it's just more, staying in tune with the market and as knowledgeable as possible and keeping up with like Reddit and trends, because all the gamers in the world they have so many ideas, so it's definitely a little hard to keep up, but we definitely try our best.
Yeah, I don't think I'd have too much to add to that. That's pretty much spot on. That it's not it's hard to mention any specific issues, but in terms of the process itself, like that's something we constantly struggle with is right, like the hardware development cycle, even like the shortest time it takes us to, let's say, make a new case is about 6 months from the time we say we want a new case to it can come out. Like if everything gets rushed through, and even hitting a moving target 6 months ahead of time, like trying to guess what that trend is going to be, um, it's tough because right the only place you can look for is like really in like the modding community, or whatever the bleeding edge guys are doing, and try to guess which thing that these guys are doing makes the most sense to bring down into like the everyman space. So that's a process that we kind of continuously deal with, and would like to get better at.
Okay. So I guess this goes for both of you, but are you looking into configuring, obviously not only PCs and peripherals, like, your hardware, but also are you looking to configure software to meet the needs of various kinds of competitive gamers?
Yeah, I mean, I think software is like an extension of products, so we're definitely trying to make things as customizable as possible.
Mm-hmm.
HyperX we've only been in the peripheral space for almost 6 years now, 5 to 6 years. So there's definitely still some things that we're trying to catch up on in some other categories, definitely. But we definitely try, and our goal is to definitely provide as much customization as possible, whether that's from a hardware perspective of changing keycaps or changing the colors or whatever, to what the software can do for your product in the future.
Yeah, and for us, we've looked into software in the past. Most of our software has been kind of limited to just like RGB control stuff because it's since we don't make peripherals, and a lot of the the peripherals are how the user directly interfaces with their PC. It's hard for us to make software that would be so universal, right? A lot of the components kind of take care of that stuff to manage fan speeds and temperatures. Like those are kind of out there. And then if you go too much further than that, you get into the realm of maybe cheating. But it's always something that we're looking at. Especially if in the case we definitely feel like there's certain companies where they already have a solution for it, but we don't really like their solution. So we've kind of taken stabs at how can we do this feature better than X company? I can't bring anyone, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. An interesting question. I think I actually might have more input on this too, but how has COVID affected the peripherals and hardware industry?
I think it's definitely been good for everyone. I know everyone's kind of transitioned to I mean, honestly, for a peripheral company, if you guys kind of see on Amazon or anything, like a lot of things are kind of sold out because everyone's kind of transitioning to a work from home environment or a school from home environment where they're like, okay, maybe it's time to upgrade your PC or kind of get a new headset that's comfortable because you're going to be at your desk at home for longer than you usually want to. So you're definitely seeing a spike in all categories, like across the board. Not even just at HyperX, but just I think all across the board. I think we see peripherals growing an insane amount, just because I think people have nothing else to do but game right now and work. So because you can't really do too much else outside. So yeah.
Yeah, in the PC space, it's been kind of a lot of good and a lot of bad with COVID, right? Because we do have to, physically assemble things to get products shipped, and the demand is definitely really high right now. But you have a combination of people who have nothing to do and are deciding to take up PC gaming, or they're booting up their old gaming machine from 3-4 years ago and realizing it doesn't run whatever the new title is that, like, let's say it doesn't run Valorant, whatever anyone's starting to play at that time. But because COVID hit Asia first, and that's where most of our components come from, there's like this component shortage that followed like a few months afterwards. So it's hard for us to build, every configuration, right? We like to offer that customization that I mentioned before, but now it's kind of like, okay, we're just whatever we can get. And with social distancing measures, right? Like, we kind of got to spread everyone out again. And so we only have so much physical space to put people in different places to build PCs. Like that slows things down a little bit more. So, we're happy for the increased demand, but it's been like pretty difficult to keep up with it. So now we're kind of dealing with the bad end of it.
Yeah.
But, we're happy to be able to provide, just kind of ask for some patience on that end.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, I was going to chime in. I mean, from what I saw, it really depended on the company, I think. For at least on the Cooler Master side, it was like you had to, like it was basically whatever came before Chinese New Year, before Lunar New Year, and anything that happened after Lunar New Year, that's when COVID hit, and it was a matter of unable to secure most of the supply to meet that demand. So I think it really depends on the company, definitely. So one last question. Actually, there's two more still before we end. So how does the product manager work with event organizers to get products to use such as, for tournaments? So how does the process work for deciding what you provide, or, so basically in the realm of sponsorships, I'm not sure if you're involved in those in any way.
Yeah, so I do get somewhat involved in those event sponsorships. It can it's a two-way street, right? There are certain events where we are actually actively trying to get our PCs into, and then there's the other side, which is smaller events, which are asking us to lend out hardware. And for the bigger events, a lot of times, aside from money, it's a lot about like which brands they're trying to align with, and we are lucky that we're kind of seen as like an ally of competition in collegiate esports. So we usually do pretty well there. Then it's just a matter of, do we have enough PCs to supply, right? You have a huge event like a Dream Heat level thing, you need hundreds and hundreds of computers. We just don't have that many. And then on the other side, like if the question is being asked from the perspective of like, I'm running an event, how do I get your PCs, right? It's just we just want to make sure that the brand is being properly represented. So however you want to present that to us in your deck, how you're going to display the PCs, or you're going to put up signage. And usually if the event has any reasonable amount of attendance, then we're definitely going to be willing to help out there.
Yeah, I think as product managers, we work with, again, a lot of departments pretty closely. Events is kind of like the go-to-market strategy, right? It's when we see a product that's about to be launched, we always look to see what events are kind of surrounding those, that launch date. Obviously, you don't want to announce something at an event and then it doesn't come out like 5 months later. People forget. So you definitely want to tie it to as close as possible, but you also want to make sure that it makes the most sense. Like, right, as an example, like TwitchCon would be like, broadcast streaming stuff, right? That you probably want to tie through, and then maybe like CES could be more like technical driven products. Just kind of knowing the audience that kind of attends those shows and being able to try your best to align products to the events, because that's kind of where you're going to capture the most interesting audience that are interested in your product.
Mm-hmm. And I guess maybe one last question before we end. So what do you guys think of cloud gaming? Do you think it's a concern for hardware companies, where it brings more focus to centralizing your computer somewhere else and streaming it to something like a lower end hardware?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Brad, go for it.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So this is something we definitely think about a lot, right? Because most of the threat to, or the products that's threatened the most by cloud gaming is the desktop PC. And one of the nice things is we've aligned ourselves more with the high end and competitive scene. And just from a physics standpoint, right? Like you can only bring that latency down so much. And I think competition, especially like real competition, where money's on the line or something like that, they're going to demand the lowest latency, the best response time, and you just can't do that with cloud gaming. And so we kind of see that, there's going to be usage models that go one way or the other. But competitive gaming is always going to need that box right there in front of you. So that's why, we see a usage for services like Shadow or Stadia, where it's more of like, I see it more of like a way to try things out. But once you get serious about the game, even if you lived in South Korea or one of those places that has amazing internet and you don't have to deal with all that latency, I think the experience is still going to be better with the PC right there next to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, essentially the same thing. I think it's super reliant on the actual connection itself. That's probably the hardest part to stabilize, right? Because obviously you want a good connection when you're gaming. As a peripheral hardware company, I think it'll be interesting to see kind of more mobile style gaming and maybe some products that are kind of geared towards not necessarily gaming in your own setup all the time, and kind of seeing how that translates into different peripherals that can be created to support that new type of environment if cloud gaming does take off.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have. Thank you guys for joining and tuning in. Brad and Sean, do you have any way that, students watching or anyone watching can follow you or your company?
Join the Discord. That's the easiest way.
How do you join the Discord?
I'll post a link in the other Discord, but yeah, or just check out our Facebook, check out our Twitter, right? We'll constantly be posting links to our Discord. That's definitely the easiest way to get in touch with us. Second would probably be through the subreddit. I'm always hanging out on the subreddit answering questions, but the Discord is probably the best place because you can have that like real-time communication.
Yeah, no, same with me. I think Discord's always the best place. I'm in the Uconnect Discord now. Try and be as helpful as possible to anyone that wants to get in the industry, not necessarily for product management directly, just any kind of tips and stuff, kind of help people kind of do like resume reviews and kind of give them pointers and stuff like that. So pretty open to chat with people. I'm pretty close to the collegiate community, especially in SoCal because we're here. But again, Discord is a platform that's huge. So you can talk to anybody anywhere. So feel free to reach out to me on there. I would say social media, but I only use it for like professional things here and there, but I don't really use it too much.
Okay, awesome. Well, again, thank you guys for joining us for the Hardware Product Management panel, and thank you again for Hitmarker Jobs for sponsoring today's, day of panels. Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.